banks, essentially Wall Street decided to, make these REITs or real estate investment trust to actually buy up the majority of the market. So they're owning a higher and higher percent of the market share of homes every year. And the problem with that is very simple. They basically push out the competition of building, and they can hold with an iron fist through these trusts, which the public can also invest in. But the problem is they are essentially running your money, which is okay. And I actually still think this is a sizable. It's a good position for anybody to hold. What a real estate investment trust is, it's a group of owned land. So when you buy a house, you go to the bank, and then you need to get a loan for the most part. When these guys clear up and they need a $20 or $40 million neighborhood or even higher, they need the cash or the liquidation provided to them, which they get through their investors. And then once they make money, these little things down here, the D's, dividend, they pay that money back to their investor. And a lot of the times what the investors do, including myself, and it's very small, but they take the money they get from the profits and they reinvest it, causing the size of the company to grow. So a normal person with owning a house, it is their biggest purchase in their lifetime. It is also what a lot of them believe is the best source of income. It is shelter, and that's great. And a house, if you plan to live on it, that's what it is, a home. It's meant to be a home. But a lot of places, like look in New Jersey, Illinois, they're charging 10-15% property tax alone for this stuff. So that's yearly. So if you own $1 million home, I mean, you're paying 10 grand a year in taxes at 10%. It's unbelievable, right? Just in taxes. So if you bought the house for 200 grand, now it's worth $1 million. You're still you're getting charged an insane amount of tax. But you also have NPI. When you go to the bank, you're basically going to the bank for leverage, and they leverage you for a low interest rate but a high amount of money, and that's how you buy a house if you don't buy the house in cash. Okay, so the bank goes, all right, well, you owe us 3% or 5% or whatever the going rate is if it's a fixed rate over this amount of time. Now, if you do decide to buy a second property and use some of your income or equity from the first property to buy a home, what's going to happen is you are going to then purchase another house, probably with a loan, okay? If you don't put down 20%, you pay the NPI or the mortgage premium, basically. You pay an extra amount of money to secure the lender's stability in the whole endeavor. Because the lenders want to lend to people that they know they're going to make their money back, okay? They don't want to lend to somebody that probably won't pay them back. So that's why the banks have restricted their financial standards and made it a lot harder for normal people to own a home. It's a lot harder for a normal person to own a home, but it's also very expensive to rent it out. So, and when you buy your own home, you pay a lot of money into the roofing, taxes. You have the closing costs for the real estate agent is quite expensive, and you have insane amount of repairs. So economic obsolescence, you have problems that come up in this area. So what a realty trust is it's a blend of everything basically put together, where you're not going to hit the lottery, but these guys go in and they clear out huge areas and then build a Starbucks and a CVS and a Walgreens, and they put a movie theater, and they put all this stuff up, and then the consumer goes and they spend money there, and then these grow substantially because they're larger properties that have more net income or gross income. So right here is a part of the breakdown of these trusts. And Wall Street owns these, okay? And you can go in and buy some yourself, okay? You could buy a piece of their pie. But essentially, they have 1 million shares and you have 400. What you're making a little bit of, they're letting you make a little bit, but essentially they're running your money. So they take your money and they go bust down and make an apartment that somebody rents out of. And you do get a profit of it, but they're making a lot of money off this, right? So drugstores, so you got an aging baby boomer population, okay? They know what they're doing. The baby boomers are getting older. You have that generation aging out, they're getting older. All right, convenience stores, dollar stores, health and fitness, transportation. All of this is what is combined into that one share what you're buying. So they clear out a bunch of land and do that. Now Wall Street they have different real estate investment trusts for anything. So you can buy an ETF on residential. So if you believe in the suburbs, you can go in and buy an ETF on residential homes where they're putting up regular neighborhoods. So they go and they buy the land, put up the neighborhood, and charge somebody to move in. Even if it's a mortgage, it doesn't matter. The bank lends that money. The real estate investment trust just puts up the home. If the house gets foreclosed on, the bank then repos that, puts that money, they basically get it at auction, or it goes onto the MLS, basically a free market auction. But these real estate investment trusts can then buy it up and rent it out. And a lot of the times, like if you look at a lot of areas that are they love apartments because apartments net a lot for them, and they put these crappy apartments together and they charge really high amount of money for a 1 or 2 bedroom. They charge for the rooms, 1 or 2 bedrooms. They charge a lot of money, and they stack them on top of each other 10 stories high. So they're charging everybody in a small amount of area to do that. So when you see these big apartments going up, it's not like one guy buying the Plex. Every now and then you have a really rich guy doing it, but it can't compete with these REITs. They're billions of dollars, like literally billions of dollars. So there are these massive funds that net massive amounts of money that then pay massive amounts of dividends to their investors, which then reinvest massive amounts of money into that growing business. That's why you can't beat them. And the banks are on their favor in lending standards. This is like it's their gold. And then you have the financial system, the Treasury and the Fed working together when they print out their monetary policy and quantitative easing. They use this money to create a substantial rate of inflation that they want to have on a slow incline, not too much, not too low, but it doesn't matter. They can finance an extreme amount of cash at 1.9% and build tons of homes if the need be. And if the price goes up, they're not the ones that take the hit. They just pass the price on to the consumer. Essentially, they're in a win-win position, okay? And these guys are mammoths. It's like, you can't go up and compete with some, like, you don't run 100 meters against Usain Bolt, right? So you go rent out one house, these guys rent out the entire complex, and they make the laws, not you. When you rent out a house, if your property tax goes up and you have 3 rentals, now you pay a ton of property tax. You got to pass it on to your tenant. If the tenant's a sitter, then the tenant goes, hey, man, I'm not paying my rent. Anything under 1 year doesn't actually need a lease. It can be a verbal lease. Anything over 365 days legally, you need a lease anyways. So after a year, a lot can happen. And look what happened with COVID and the forbearance. Everybody went into forbearance, and a lot of these tenants, they're the ones paying. It's the average middle-class man that did something for themselves, bought a second home, rented it out, thought it was going to pay off their kids' freaking house mortgage. Now they're sunk in their own home paying off some sitter from California. While these real estate investment trusts, they put up the stuff where they sell the drugs, man. Like the drugstores. Look at that. 11% of that trust is drugstores. 30% of Americans have 2 or more prescriptions. Think about that. That's a lot. And then you have the dollar stores they put up in these. They go knock out in like somewhere in the middle of Tennessee where there's not a lot of people. In the South, they love these dollar stores. And the dollar stores don't have a really high net income where they don't make tons of money. They make decent money, the dollar stores do. But the real thing is the land. It's like when McDonald's was made, it was like, wait a minute, we're making billions of dollars a year by owning the land. You own the real estate, you own the business. And then all of a sudden, they have their different write-offs. And owning a home, it's residential is a little different. So you have different laws from commercial to residential, okay? There's different types of properties that when you buy, you have to adhere to certain rules. I didn't want to make this like a really long ramble, but this has been how Wall Street literally, like these dividends, they grow over time and they pay back into, the dividends are what causes the growth of the company essentially. So say they do $1 billion investment, well then they start making millions of dollars in dividends, and those dividends go back into the company. Even if they only pull 10% for themselves, think about how fast the company's growing compared to the average person getting screwed with some sitter. And yes, it's your responsibility to rent out the correct tenant, but you're gonna make a lot more money if you can get a 30-plex or a 40-plex and have 40 tenants renting them out, and 2 or 3 leave, you find new ones, and you essentially can find a lot better people. With this one house, it's one liability. You're basically chips all in. So owning a home has a lot of hidden expenses, and those expenses range from broken water pipes to upkeeping your pool to getting your floors done. And with modern technology, freaking washers and dryers break every week. You have to do all of this stuff, and the homes are just so modernized and they're technologically advanced where it's a smart home. Yeah, technology is a little cheaper, but there's so much that the renter wants in a house. You can still make money renting out a house. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying that these guys make it a lot harder for everyone else. And even if I had a choice between $400,000 in a house for myself or $400,000 into a REIT, I'm going with them. Just because, yes, they manage your money, but REITs over the last certain amount of time, REITs have outperformed traditional housing markets. So the housing market goes up like this, REITs go up like this. It's outperformed. It's just the way it is. So real estate investment trusts have gotten really big lately, and yes, they had a crash off in March, but they, just like everything else, they recovered. And like I said, the banks, the Wall Street, and then the Fed and the Treasury, they work together. Our government is so big that Wall Street basically works with them, and the government basically is owning the bond market with the elite. I mean, it's not like a conspiracy theory at this point. It's true. And I just wanted to point out some of the REITs and why it's really hard for the average person to own a home when you have things like this going on, because they want to rent to you. They want you to pay rent. So these guys really want you to rent. And rent can be better than buying, because now when you buy, they want to charge you an insane amount of tax on your housing. It seems like a lose-lose for the average man, and a lot to gain for Wall Street.